Hello Year 10 and welcome to Remote Learning Task 12, Part 2. Your title for this section is How Far Were German Youth Nazified? I just wanted to remind you that this task is divided into two parts. First part on women and their experience under the Nazi dictatorship. There is a PowerPoint, but there is also a YouTube video where I explain what you need to take notes on and I go into a little bit more detail. Complete those two tasks and use the support document to guide you. This is obviously the youth video. Complete the tasks 3 to 5 and use the support document to guide you. There is also the PowerPoint attached. So this had the tasks for the women PowerPoint broken down, but it also has the youth groups broken down to help you answer how far were the German youth Nazified. Now, what does that mean? Let's unpack it. So what does it mean to be Nazified? The idea that you are under the Nazi influence or control, or you begin to exhibit Nazi ideals or characteristics. Some may say young Germans were indoctrinated by the Nazis, so that means that they were conditioned or persuaded or even brainwashed to follow Nazi ideals. So we're going to be trying to answer to what extent were the German youth brainwashed or Nazified or under the influence of the Nazis. Now, before we can look at the extent to which the youth were Nazified, we need to look at the aims of Nazi youth policies. So you may want to pause the video here to take some notes. The Nazis believed that boys and girls were equal but different. They had different strengths to offer Germany, so their policies differed. Hitler knew that many German adults were not Nazi supporters, but he thought if he could get to the young and make them support the Nazi party, then that would secure the future of his 1,000-year Reich. So Nazi propaganda often encouraged young people to see Hitler as the father figure. And you know that from when we were looking at women, where the 10th child had to be named Adolf if it was a boy, and their godfather had to be Hitler. So that's just sort of perpetuating that idea that Hitler is the father figure. These are the Nazi youth groups for boys. You might just want to list these as I go through them. So you had the 6 to 10-year-olds in the Pimpfer, the little fellows. The 10 to 14-year-olds were in the Deutsche Jungvolk, German young people. And the 14 to 18-year-olds were in the Hitler Jugend, Hitler Youth. So make a note of that. Here we have a summary of the Hitler Youth training. So it was divided into political, physical, military and character training. Political was to make them supporters of the Nazis. Physical, to ensure that they were as fit and healthy as possible. Military, to make sure that they could serve the state either as workers or soldiers. And then character, designed to mould their character to ensure that they were loyal to the Nazis. I would now pause the video and take a couple of bullet points per section so you understand the Hitler Youth training, which will allow us to answer our question of how far were the German youth Nazified. Now, Nazi youth groups for girls. Again, I'd pause the video to take a note of these. 10 to 14-year-olds belong to the young maidens. 14 to 21-year-olds were in the Bund Deutscher Mädel, or BDM, League of German Maidens. Some of the activities the League of German Maidens participated in were similar to that of the Hitler Youth. There were political activities including rallies and oaths of allegiance. Physical and character training also occurred. For example, camping and marching were compulsory. However, the girls also had different training. For example, they did not receive military training. Girls were trained to cook, iron, make beds, sew, and generally to prepare to be a housewife. So there is a massive overlap here with the PowerPoint that we looked at on the experiences of women. They were also taught the importance of something called racial hygiene, the idea that they should keep the German race pure by only marrying Aryan men. And Aryan men are usually depicted as having blonde hair and blue eyes, like here. So you may want to pause the video to take some notes on this and this previous slide. Now, task 3. I would like you to list the aims for the German youth. You may need to go back to a few slides before in order to remind yourself of what these were. And then I'd like you to make a table with 2 columns showing the ways in which the Nazi youth groups were the same or different for boys and girls. So, for example, a similarity you might draw out is that they both had political activities, including rallies and oaths of allegiance. Now, did the youth groups achieve the Nazis' aims? That's why you have noted them down so you know how far they were achieved. Some young people were enthusiastic and committed Hitler Youth members, however, some were less keen. They did not like being forced to participate in activities they did not enjoy or believe in, hence the Edelweiss pirates that formed in resistance to the Hitler Youth. I've also uploaded a video which is a historical fiction reading from a book called All the Light We Cannot See, and that shows how trying some of the activities of the Hitler Youth were. Many German adults also had reservations. For example, parents believed that they were being undermined by Nazi youth groups as they taught that loyalty should ultimately lie with the Nazi state and not with your family. Sorry, there's a mistake there. Right, that's better. So ultimately, the parents felt that they were being undermined by Hitler. Nazi education. So, in 1934, Bernhard Rust, a leading Nazi, was made education minister. Rust saw schools as a way of controlling views of young Germans and once said that the whole purpose of education is to create Nazis. So this is a really important point to help us answer our overall question of how far were German youth Nazified. So I would definitely note that down. During the 1930s, he made a series of changes to bring all schools under the control of the Nazis. And that was by controlling teachers and controlling the curriculum, which I'm going to talk about now. So as early as April 1933, the Nazis passed a law giving them the power to sack teachers and head teachers they didn't approve of. So that's like Boris Johnson coming to our school and just taking one look at Miss Stevens and saying, actually, no, we don't approve of her. She doesn't believe in our views, or she doesn't believe in our ideology, for example. Obviously, that wouldn't happen, but that's just to show you how much control the Nazis had. All teachers had to swear an oath of loyalty to Hitler and had to join the Nazi Teachers League, so they had to join a special group. The Nazi Teachers League ran education. They set out Nazi ideas, which teachers should support, and 200,000 teachers had attended the courses by 1939. Having taken control of teachers, the Nazis expected their teachers to behave like Nazis. So teachers had to teach the students how to do the Nazi salute. They started and ended each lesson with Heil Hitler, and there were Nazi posters and flags decorating the classrooms. Control of the curriculum. New subjects were added to the curriculum, such as race studies. German children were taught how to classify racial groups and were told that Aryans were superior and they should not marry races that were seen as inferior by the Nazis, for example, the Jews. Traditional subjects like mathematics were modified to make them more useful to Nazi ideas, so they might have to calculate the weight of a missile, for example. PE and sport was doubled to create strong workers, soldiers and healthy mothers. Curriculum was different for boys and girls. For example, domestic science, including cookery and needlework, became compulsory for girls to make them better wives and mothers. From 1935, all new textbooks had to be approved by the Nazis. New history books were rewritten to present the Treaty of Versailles as a stab in the back and say that the Jews were evil. And then Mein Kampf was a compulsory school text. Pupils gathered in school halls to listen to major political speeches on the radio. So make a note of that and make sure you've got some notes on the control of the teachers. Task 4, we're going to look at some source material because remember your exam will require you to look at a primary source. So this is a German father describing a question that his child had to answer. When Klaus got back from school at 5 o'clock, he bullied me into helping him with his homework. Here is a maths problem picked out at random. A plane on takeoff carries 12 bombs, each weighing 10 kilos. The aircraft makes for Warsaw, the centre of the international Jewry. It bombs the town. On takeoff, with all bombs on board and a fuel tank containing 1,500 kilos of fuel, the aircraft weighed 8 tons. When it returned from the crusade, there was still 230 kilos of fuel left. What is the weight of the aircraft when empty? What can you learn from this source about Nazi education? So, task 5. Due to the notes you've taken, you are now equipped to answer the question, how far were German youth Nazified? Remember, that means how far were they under the thumb of the Nazis, how far were they brainwashed by the Nazis, how far did they themselves become little Nazis? So to what extent were young people in Germany under the control or influence of Nazis and their ideas? Use examples from youth groups and education to write a little paragraph, not a massive one, to answer this question. You may wish to use this support. Well done, Year 10, you have completed Task 12, Part 2.